Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 6 of Paper Girls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have young Tiffany meeting older Tiffany, which adult Tiffany, because this is what Tiffany at it's been 11 years, so she's like 23, 24, something like that. So it's like, yeah, this version of herself is actually a lot more comprehensive of like this and taking it in a lot more stride, because Tiff's like, oh, I'm surprised you're taking this so well. And even she's like, oh man, this is so weird. And she's like, oh, come here, my poor time traveling babies, and kind of gives everyone a hug because everyone's kind of feeling down. Obviously, KJ regrets everything, but she can't really tell Mac and Erin why she flipped out last episode the way she did, because she herself is still processing all of it. At least the tampons came in handy. They were able to kind of plug up Mac's nose with it, but they end up spending time at older Tiffany's house. And I think it's interesting because Erin and Mac have this conversation about, like, because Mac's like, yeah, she likes herself, she's getting along with herself, but that's also because, like, well, Tiffany, like, loves herself. So, because for her, it's like, man, this is me, like, the older version of me, I'm so cool, but I'm also, like, super smart, got into MIT. Like, for her, it's like, oh, life's going all the right ways. And I think maybe it makes Erin feel a certain way, because one, well, she had to watch her older version of herself die. Two, her older version of herself wasn't what she thought she'd be, and she kind of, obviously, she apologized to her older self, but it's still like, right, I kind of judged you for, like, our life not being the way I want it to be. And because her and her older self didn't click immediately, especially the way, like, Tiff is clicking with her older self, you know? So I think all that, just a culmination of all that, because, you know, Mac's trying to be like, oh, just give them time, they'll start butting heads to some extent, which even they do, because Tiff has a boyfriend, and but he's not really a boyfriend. It's just kind of like, but she kind of placates him. It's like, right, she plays like the whole like, oh, I'm so kind of like, oh, I'm helpless and I'm dumb. Like, she dumbs herself down just for the sake of, like, right. If you kind of play into what people want you to be, it's less of a headache. So it seems like it's like, yeah, you're gonna get what you want, but for Tiffany, it's like, why should I ever have to not be myself just to placate other people? Like, young Tiffany can't recognize that, but, you know, older Tiffany eventually kind of tells her, like, right, life isn't what you think it is. You know, sometimes you have to play a certain role to kind of get what you want in this world. You have to kind of play the game to some extent. So it's like, right, it's a fun time with her boyfriend, but that's kind of all it is. Like, she doesn't really like him. She doesn't even really consider it a relationship, you know? Because she doesn't really, like, care for him. Because I'm about to say, like, their relationship doesn't seem that great. He was like, oh, you're supposed to drop me off at work. He's like, yeah, sure, thanks. Oh, you're babysitting? Thanks for abandoning me for that and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, trust me, you can't stay mad at me forever. And she's playing up the cutesiness of it all, but it's just kind of like, yeah, kind of got him wrapped around my finger. Playing kind of like, oh, like the hot, dumb girlfriend, you know? Just for the sake of just kind of getting whatever she wants and not having to deal with, like, his bullshit on a daily basis. Because ultimately, they're trying to find their way back home, and young Tiff suggests, let's find Larry. He's still alive in 99, but Mac and Erin want nothing to do with that plan, because it's like, no, that's stupid. Like, let's have nothing to do with him. He's, for one, he tricked us into coming in 1999, and he got the older version of me killed, so, like, I want nothing to do with him. But, like, older Tiff and younger Tiff go to see him regardless, because he's the only means. It's, like, not like we can figure this out any other way. There's no one else to turn to in this circumstance. So they go off, and they eventually meet Larry on the farm and kind of explain, like, oh, we're STF, and convinced him. And young Tiff kind of got to chew into him, because it's like, right, because of you trapped 4 12-year-old girls in a time that's not their own, and you got someone killed. But for him, it's like, no, I'm part of STF. Like, there's no way I'd do something like that. STF, they're the good guys, so there's no way. Because this is him, like, he's only been part of STF. He's only been part of the underground for the past 18 months, so he's still, like, a newbie recruit. But he's like, no, I would never do that. And ultimately, he was like, I promise you what happened, I won't let that happen. And she's like, I hope you don't. And he's like, well, where can I contact you if we need to get in contact again? And she's like, we won't. Because even she's, like, upset, because she did trust Larry. It's like, right, like, that's it. I mean, also like, you're a kid and you want to trust an adult, and it's like, right, Larry lied to you. He went off and got killed, and now he doesn't have to take the responsibility for the choices he made, and kind of getting you guys stuck here. Plus, he doesn't have to live with the consequences of like, right, he got Aaron killed, but this is going to be ruminating in his mind because Tiff was older Tiff was breaking down trying to understand the science of trying to figure out the time travel, and also why she doesn't remember it. So that's why I'm, once again, because I keep changing it, not changing it every episode, but I'm always trying to understand everything's rules of time travel, because obviously the most recent thing I watched involving time travel, well, actually, I'm trying to think, were they at the same time or not? Because obviously Miss Marvel has its own time travel rules in comparison to like Endgame's time travel rules, and then there's also like Loki, and then there's also Loki, and then there's also the time traveler's wife, like how that works. Like paradoxes aren't really a thing in that, and they have yet to use the word paradox, so maybe in this continuity they don't really lean into that. So because once again, Tiffany's just trying to say like, right, why don't I remember this? So once again, it might not just be a paradox thing. Maybe there's a loop situation here, but once again, they go back to their original time and they just don't have their memories, and they kind of go off and eventually live their lives, and then eventually will meet the younger versions of themselves. They just won't remember all that went down. Once again, I think it's tragic, and hope that isn't the case, because there's a lot they learned about their futures that could help them. I mean, Erin would probably want to shape her life a little bit differently, do things differently. Tiff's probably the only one that's 100% happy with who she is. I mean, KJ, I think, kind of gets there this episode, which we'll get to soon enough. But, yeah, like, Tiff found out from her older version of herself that, yeah, she went to MIT, but she left because it's like, right, the looks, the comments. I think part of me was wondering, is it, they didn't talk about, but part of me wonders, is like, being black at MIT, like, is that what she was kind of talking about, or, maybe certain aspects of being black at MIT, or just like in general, like, right, getting looks from people, because I am me, like she is the party person that she is, but she's also like the smart person, and maybe like, I don't know if like the party person, the sociable person, whether that's just kind of like a persona that she kind of created, like just to, make people kind of like not, disarm people to some extent, or is it just that is a part of her, and it's just like, right, people at MIT couldn't go with because I'm me, like I go at things my own speed, my own pace, and like in MIT everything's very rigid. You have to do things, there's only one right way, and which, I mean, obviously schools are like that, because there's the whole thing of like, right, when you're like a math class, for example, I remember that kind of constantly getting drilled into us in like different school like classes, whether it's like algebra or like even geometry, of like, you need to show your work. Even if you can do it all in your head, I need to know how you got there. It's like, well, it doesn't matter as long as I got an answer right. It's like, it's the principle of the matter. It's very much like, right, you have to follow the rules. It's because some people would make the argument school's more, it's about knowledge, yes, but it's also about learning to follow the rules and doing the work properly. That whole conversation. And I think for Tiff, she's kind of a little rebellious and like, no, like, there's like, I'm going to be like bound to like, thinking inside the box when I want to think outside the box. She's working on an institute, which obviously younger Tiff has an idea of, because in 2019 the institute ended up working, so it's like, so it's like a school for education and stuff, so it's like, yeah, like, so it works out, so it's like, right, my life isn't what I thought it was going to be, but it took some turns, and she's like, in the end it still was a great success. Granted, once again, we don't know, she read up about the institute and stuff like that, sure, but once again, like, just like she doesn't really know about 1999 Tiff, she doesn't know too much about 2019 Tiff, about like all that she had to go through, maybe the ups and downs of life, or just where she is present day, and also like, is she even happy, because that's got to be, but she's always just focused on like, no, my goal, like, being valedictorian, she just wants to see her like graduation, like, I think recording and stuff like that. So but circling to KJ really quickly, she ended up going to the movies and saw 2001, where she saw her and Lauren together. And once again, she's still processing it. And she kind of talks to Lauren about the movie a little bit, but then she was like, how do you know that She's like, what? She's like, you like movies, but then Lauren caught on, like, oh, okay, it's like, right. And she says the line of, like, everyone kind of goes at their own pace. And she says that, but when you find that movie that really, like, kind of, that you like, that it kind of makes you a little more comfortable with yourself, like, that's what matters. It's basically about finding that person who brings that out of you, makes you feel comfortable in your own skin about embracing who you are, that other people will not be too happy about it, but as long as you have that one person by your side to make you feel okay about who you are, that's just a jumping off point. And for KJ, gave her a lot to think about. She's like, now she's, even about to talk to Mac about it. Like, I think she might be that I might be. Because it's like, there's I forgot who had that conversation that, I think Aaron had it with Mac, and KJ almost had a similar conversation with Mac too, about like things on the surface aren't quite what they seem, because she's like, right, I might come from the family I am, and like the clothes and everything, which I think is interesting. I didn't talk about this last episode, but I should have, because I just thought about it, was KJ was so certain. That's why she didn't want to see herself in 2019, because she was like, yeah, like, I'm just going to be like, if I'm going to be what my mother wanted me to be, then I have no interest in seeing that person. And it's like, you become your own person. You even surprise yourself, because you're like, whoa, I didn't wait. Like, once again, she might have been feeling inklings of that, and she kind of buried it down. Maybe she is aware, maybe just a subconscious thing, but it was there, and now she's coming to terms and trying to process all of it. And now it's like, right, like, who are you in the future then? This is you in 99, and you look so happy. And for her, it's like, that's all that really matters. Like, all the clothes, all the riches, all the family stuff. It's like, yeah, that hides what's kind of really underneath. Like, just because you look, great and like rich and stuff on the outside, doesn't mean you're like happy, because like, even 99, Erin has to put up with like her mom trying to dictate stuff, set her up with people, like her mom wanting her to be what she wants her to be, instead of letting Erin be free and just be herself. I mean, not Erin, KJ, just allow KJ just be herself and be free. So, Erin did ask Mac about her future self, and rather than telling the truth, she lied, which, considering the circumstances, it's a lot less depressing than admitting the truth that you know about your future. Because, once again, they didn't talk about it this episode, but she's been dead for a couple years at this point in time. In 99, she's been dead for a couple years. So that's also got to be a thing of like, cool, like, there's future versions of everyone else here except for me. Like, I know where I am. But she lied and said, like, oh, I'm a veterinarian. She's like, oh, I'm going to medical school. She's like, for animals. I was like, I'm wondering, did she ever think about that? Or was it just like, oh, I want to have a prestigious job just like my brother. Like, I want to make myself seem classier. Because, once again, their family was always seen like, oh, we're the family that gets shit on. We're seen as dirt poor. So she wanted, like, right, my brother became so prestigious, and I believe probably in her mind, it's like, if I was still alive, I would have become so prestigious too. And so she's saying all the stuff about how her life is, and her and Mac go and keep an eye on her mom, Erin's mom, and Missy. And she's saying like, oh, this is going to be the point where like mom's going to get sick around this time and Missy's going to leave her. But it's also, I think, because she's like, oh, like Missy and mom, they don't really connect. Like, Missy never really understood mom like I did. And I love how that ties into the opening I didn't quite talk about, but Erin's in this debate against Reagan. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to call my opponent out for being so youthful and her inexperience. But it's like, oh yeah, the moderator quotes, it's like, oh yeah, like, no one asked you to be a martyr, Erin. And then, like, Reagan's, like, telling Erin, like, oh, like, did your mom... Because she's like, no, like, mom needs me. Like, I had to be the one that was responsible. It's like, yeah, but did anyone ever ask you to do that? Did your mom ever ask... It's like, no, you took that upon yourself. And it's something adult Erin now you was able to kind of see in hindsight, is that she used taking care, like, yes, you want to take care of people, that's great, but don't use it as an excuse not to live your own life, to kind of push people away. And that's what she did. Even as a young age, she's still like, she's like, because I think when their dad died and her mom being so heartbroken about it, it's like, right, mom never really got over it. She just felt the need, like, she had to be the one to step up in so many regards. And because in this moment, you even see it like, oh, Missy and her mom are getting along fine. It's like, I wonder, because I think maybe Erin's doing the same thing as everyone else. They're kind of putting up a front because she's like, yeah, Missy ends up leaving. But it's like, right. She heard part of that conversation between Missy and herself in 2019. So she knows that things aren't so black and white. It's that she pushed kind of Missy away and just kind of like, yeah, she took care of mom, but it's like she kind of made that choice on her own. No one, her mom never asked her to do that. Missy never asked her to do it because Missy would have happily helped. And I think it's putting things in perspective for Erin about not just who she was in the future, but right, me being who I am in the future is only a byproduct of the building blocks to me kind of being the martyr, me taking everything on myself. It started with me. Like I'm already doing that back in '88, you know? So I think that's kind of giving her a lot of hindsight. And obviously she's talking, because she doesn't know because Mac didn't tell anybody, but she's talking about like, right, you know, you're lucky, your life is the way it is. And Mac's like, yeah, I'm not that lucky. But it's like, oh, you don't know what it's like knowing like you are going to die. Like the thing is, the difference is your future self wasn't supposed to die. Things played out differently. You saw yourself die. But the difference is Mac knows when she died. I mean, she doesn't know the exact date, but she knows it's like, yeah, I die 4 years from now. Like, so not like 93. She's like, I know that's the year I die, you know, and I know what ends up happening to me. But once again, like her and KJ, rather than kind of opening up, they lash out because it's a lot to handle because like Erin's going on and on about like, oh, how your life is this and then it's like, yeah, and then Mac does what she does. She gets defensive, and she's like, "Oh, why don't you tell your like older self in 2019 not to get in this machine and for her stupid ass not to die?" Which obviously, like, Erin's just like, "Fuck you, Mac," and bounces. But it's like, yeah, because Mac lashed out, you know, rather than being honest about everything, because she didn't want. She even says like when she finally does open up to KJ, she's like, don't tell the others. It's like, why not? I don't want them to look at me the way you're looking at me now, like with such pity and stuff, because I think maybe to some extent she's always had to deal with like people pitying her, and now it's like, right, you're just going to look at me, people are going to look at me as like a ticking time bomb, like a ticking clock, and I don't want to be looked at that way, like I'm some case of like someone fragile you have to be worried about. I thought it was also heartbreaking when she told that story of like, no matter how bad things got, she thought, like, it doesn't matter. It'll all be okay because I have a bright future ahead of me. When I'm 18, I'll leave this town and I'll be done with it. Because that was also the thing, too, for Tiffany was she was kind of, like, ragging on people still being in town. Because, like, oh, yeah, because, you know, 1999 Tiffany's boyfriend, it's like, yeah, he still lives here and stuff. Because for her, it's like, yeah, I'm going to move on to bigger and better things. Which is also kind of a slide against Erin, 2019 Erin, because she, even after all those years, she was still living in the same house in the same town. I was like, that's kind of a nasty slide against her to some extent. But it seems like we know KJ went off and kind of lived her life. Obviously, she goes, at least here in 99, she's in New York doing her own thing. Who knows if that continued in 2019 or not. But anyway, circling back. The thought of, like, whatever she would do upon turning 18 and leaving this whole shithole town behind, she felt like, yeah, like, as long as I had that, that gave me the courage to deal with whatever shit came my way. And now it's like, what was the point? It was all pointless. Like, I'm gonna die 4 years from now. Like, my life ends up, you know, I make it to 16 and that's it. That is a lot to chew on and a lot to deal with, especially because she's dealing with it with herself, but KJ's there and now knows the truth, so I think she's going to be a lot more supportive, and probably Mac is probably going to be a little like apprehensive to that and probably kind of push her away, because it's like, no, I don't want you looking at me with sympathy, and just because you know the truth now. So eventually the others will find out too, but I'm curious whether it's going to be Mac that tells them, or will KJ say it, because something's going to probably go down and KJ's like, you guys need to be more sensitive. Mac found out in 2019. She found out that she dies when she turns sometime when she's 16 from being sick. You know, so that was quite the interesting development all around. But they finally were able to crack Larry's code with Larry giving them the cipher. They ended up finding out that the next. Timeline-wise, the next wormhole that's going to open up that they could time travel through won't be until 2006, so they have to wait 7 years. Specifically because it's like July 25th, and it's like a little after July 24th here or something like that. It might even, yeah. So it's like, yeah, they have to wait a very long time and stuff. So it's like, yeah, well, guess we're going to have to stay here because, like, there's no other means of time travel except the ending where we're on Larry's farm and he sees all those newspapers and a bike and it's like, what's this all about? And he looks at the newspaper and it's from November 1st, 1988. So I guess that's supposed to be indicative of time is breaking down, maybe like time is like maybe all like either is being indicative of all time is collapsing upon itself, kind of like the season 2 finale of Legends of Tomorrow, if you've seen that, where they kind of broke time. Not unless it's something of that ilk, but since it's specifically 1988, my thing is maybe 1988 is following them because they are a paradox and they shouldn't exist here. They're breaking time by it being here, and they're dragging their own time until it's going to collapse on this one, and maybe it's going to start collapsing. I mean, once again, maybe it could still all be true and just time is going to be collapsing upon itself, but everything's bleeding over. So I would assume it's because it's specifically November 1st, 1988, the time they left. It seems that's indicative of, yeah, like time is kind of collapsing and following them. So it makes you wonder, did it already happen in 2019 and you're just not aware of? And so now this like time collapsing paradox to some extent, very spoilers, kind of similar to Umbrella Academy season 3 specifically. Maybe something of that ilk is kind of happening in times, you know, it's kind of a Kugelblitz type of situation going on. Obviously a little bit of a different paradox situation, but still somewhat similar. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.